Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Good Stories podcast. I'm Jody here again with Steven. And something cool to mention this week before we get going. We had a chance just recently to record several short stories, and they'll be posting soon. I already did one. They go up on Substack, Facebook, and Patreon. They're mostly Stevie using his superpower of condensing tons of reading and knowledge of history and huge concepts into short stories, 10 to 20 minutes. That I think are really interesting, actually. For instance, I just posted one on the history of Rome. We've all heard of Rome and maybe know a little bit about it, but in 18 minutes or so, Stevie talks through the beginning, the kingdom, the republic, and the empire, which I know now are all separate things. I learned that. It's really excellent and accessible, and I always learn something. So I do highly recommend checking them out because I don't know all those things, and he does. But you can find all our stuff at patreon.com/goodstoriespodcast. That's really the best place to find everything in one place because it has our episodes and all the shorts and things. So patreon.com/goodstoriespodcast. I really enjoyed your Rome one. Good job.
Well, thank you. Thanks for letting me talk about Rome. I like talking about Rome.
All right, well, let's get into today's story. We did Discworld last time we were together, which is just silliness. This one's not like that.
Twist.
We do like to shift gears big time. So this book is particularly short. My copy is only 53 pages. However, it is big in terms of concept and thought. It's called The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. And I think for most people, if you've heard the name Tolstoy, it's associated with really long books like War and Peace or Anna Karenina, which are very long books. But as he got older, it turns out his stories actually got shorter and shorter. But wow, does he tell a moving story. But the title is no joke. This story is about death and a man who doesn't want to die and his inner dialogue as he faces the inevitability of it happening and soon. So while I think this is an important subject and one we should all probably think about more than we do, I also want to give a warning ahead so you're not taken by surprise. There are no spoilers in this book because the title says it. It is The Death of Ivan Ilyich. But I hope you join us as we talk through this one because even though it's about death, it's also about life. So, time for a story.
Ivan Ilyich dies. That's how the story starts. And the first thing we experience is the effect of this event on his family and colleagues. The story then takes us back to the beginning of his life. We get to watch as he grows up and finds his place in the world. He gets married, has children, and continues to work on his home and his career before he falls ill. To everyone's frustration, no doctor can diagnose his condition. To his own horror, no doctor can cure him. Through pain, suffering, and a knowledge of his certain death, Ivan Ilyich will face his own mortality and the results of the life he has led.
So no need to do a spoiler this time, as I said, but I did write down, what do they call them on the back cover of books? Like recommendations, commendations, where people say nice things about it.
Yeah, what are those called? I'm sure there's a word for them.
Those things.
Attributions, friendly comments.
Complos. Big compliments. Here's the ones I found for people who haven't heard this book. So, a cornerstone of world literature and a beacon for anyone seeking meaning beyond material success. There's one. One of the wisest, most honest works of fiction ever written. I think that might be true. A masterpiece of spiritual literature. And I like this one. It says it makes you reflect on every hour of your life. In 53 pages. How many pages is yours?
It's 60 pages in my version.
Okay, so we have different translations. Leo Tolstoy was a Russian. And I don't speak Russian, but the names are so fun every time. Can we talk a little bit about classic Russian literature before we get to Tolstoy himself? I feel like there's some threads that people might not know about in Russian literature. It's like when you think of Russian literature, what comes to mind?
Tolstoy.
Yeah.
Pretty much when I think of Russian literature, the two giants that I think of are Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. But there's a number of others that are huge and important. Pushkin, Chekhov, and then in the 20th century, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. There's many others. Russian literature was, I mean, they were passionate about it. Especially, it seems like in the 19th century, it seems like before the revolution, there were so many writers, so many poets and authors, and they just loved words. Our dad used to watch a movie that I have to convince I never sat all the way through, but
Dr.
it was
Zhivago?
Dr. Zhivago. And I don't really remember it because I never sat all the way through it, but there was a line in it where he said, "Nobody loves poetry like a Russian."
Mm.
And that surprised me because I didn't think of Russia as a poetic people, but yeah, I think they are.
I read everything I could from Russian authors, I don't know, for like 2 years. I just read all the Russian literature I could because I picked up Crime and Punishment, and it was shocking. It was so not what I expected. So Crime and Punishment, if you haven't read it, I mean, I hadn't, and I thought, something judicial. There's murder and mayhem, and there's this court of law, something in Russia. I don't know. I had nothing specific in mind, just these vague ideas. It's not that at all. And I think it represents a lot of the same kinds of things in this book and other works by Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. They are in their head. I mean, there is a lot of their thinking and stewing and meditating and over analyzing everything, but it's all internal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's common across Russian literature, and they go through massive moral and ethical questions and existential crises. I mean, they're just so much more poetic, softer than I really expected. I was expecting legal and warfare, and that's no.
I almost, for the plot summary on this, just left it with Ivan Ilyich dies, because in terms of plot, that's basically what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right; it is so internal. It is basically psychology beginning to end, and it's true with these short books, but it's also true with the long ones. That's what struck me about War and Peace, is how much of that is just the internal struggle of the individuals throughout the book. Or the other great one, of course, Brothers Karamazov, is something we may have to do sometime. And again, the plot itself you could sum up pretty quickly, but the amount of time that goes into the feelings and thoughts and philosophies and theologies of the individuals is just stunning. And so if you like that sort of thing, Russian literature can be just great.
It's moving. I don't think I've ever read one that isn't moving. Even Anna Karenina, which is not my favorite at all, it's kind of designed, in my mind, to be bleak.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of stuff in it that makes you think and feel. And it's really well told. So Tolstoy, I didn't know this. I didn't know anything about him, actually, as an author ahead of this. But after he spent so long writing War and Peace, he was over it. No more long books, not so many details.
Well, the hand cramping alone. I mean, that's a lot of ink on paper.
Well, so he was done with, he was going to get rid of all, here's a quote, artistic pretensions and superfluous detail. And then he wrote Anna Karenina. So that came later.
We don't see the world the same way.
I think he was just a roller coaster because he did think through things. And so he'd go through times of great hope and great depression. So between his massive works, War and Peace and Anna Karenina, it's just fun to say, Anna Karenina, but he wrote children's primers, like the ABCs. Mm-hmm. He tried to educate the peasantry around it because he had an estate. He was wealthy, but in his soul, he admired, and that comes out in his writings all the time, the peasantry, people who really, tilled the land and served and knew what was good. So he was wealthy and famous, but he kind of hated being wealthy and famous.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Yeah, he definitely had a fascinating life and a fascinating man. He came from the aristocracy. He had wealth, he had money, and he lived a fairly dissolute life early on, is my understanding. Multiple affairs, gambling debts, all sorts of things like that. But he had this moral and spiritual crisis and turn in his life. And from there, really changed his view on things. And when you look him up, there's a couple of terms that usually get associated with him. Pacifism is certainly one of the big ones. I mean, Gandhi got a lot of his ideas, my understanding, from Tolstoy. I think they were pen pals just prior to Tolstoy's death in 1910, I think. And so pacifism was certainly a big part of his life. I know he wrote back and forth with some of the Quakers in the U.S., and that comes through in a lot of his writings. That's also come through in a lot of references to him. So, for example, when we went through The Ball and the Cross, the first peacemaker that they talk to, the one that tries to get the two to stop fighting, is a Tolstoyan. And he basically uses Tolstoy's arguments to say that we should all be pacifists. So pacifism is definitely something from Tolstoy. The other one, and I just think this is a fun term, Christian anarchy.
Huh.
I don't tend to put those two words together in my head, but his whole premise on it, as I understand, was that governments are essentially evil. Governments are oppressive. And the whole point of Christianity, especially coming out of the Sermon on the Mount, is against that. And so he was very much pro peasant, right? Pro the poor. And he lived on a commune for a lot of the last of his life. And so even though he was very much a Christian and known to be a Christian writer, he was still tolerated when the Soviet Empire came around because he was sort of a proto-socialist in many ways that are probably far more complicated than I actually understand. But interesting guy.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of autobiographical aspects and stuff he writes. So Levin is another. I keep saying Anna Karenina, coming back to it. It's because I don't want to do it as a story. So if I mentioned these pieces, we're over it.
There you go.
You've read it, right?
I have.
It's devastating.
I don't plan on reading. I remember being sad when I was done with it.
It is sad on layers of sad.
But people love it, and it is widely recognized as a masterpiece. So I don't want to come off as bashing it.
No,
I think
it's brilliant.
I was probably just not in a place to appreciate what it was.
It is brilliant, but sad. And so I do not mean to insult it, but it is not my flavor, especially this time in life. Too heavy, which is funny because we're going to talk about Ivan Ilyich.
But it's shorter.
It's way shorter.
60 pages. I mean, we can handle that.
But there's a character in it called Levin, named Levin. And he makes it. He gets it all. He's successful. He's got money. He gets the marriage. He's happy or should be happy. He's got children. He's got the estate. I mean, he has everything that, according to Tolstoy and his contemporaries, he to be happy, made it in life. But this is lines from it where Levin is saying, what am I? Where am I? Why am I here? These are Tolstoy's questions to himself throughout his life, truly. And Levin's response when he finally kind of reconciles, I'm abridging big time here, but basically the sum up is faith in God, in serving the good. So not big organizations, not the government, not the church as it was, but serving what is good. It says that is the sole purpose of man. And so when Tolstoy was more right-minded, not in the slough of depression, that was his big conversion, where he was there and here and present to serve what was good.
Yeah, I think that is good. That's great. I came to Russian literature through Tolstoy. When I was in middle school, I remember checking out the Tolstoy Reader from the library. It's probably still there. I don't know. But I remember thinking that several of his short stories were great. Some of his longer ones, they only abridged into that because it was a general reader. There were some plays at the end, and I remember thinking, some people just shouldn't write plays. Because his other stuff was awesome, and the plays I struggled with. Maybe it was just me being a kid.
It was translation. Lost in translation.
Definitely. But there was one story from it that has stuck with me and kind of haunted me in a good way ever since. He describes a dream Because he was a man, as you said, who questioned deeply, who would fluctuate through different thought process. He worried about his philosophy and his soul and his faith and, how he's acting in his life. But there was one dream, and I'm not going to remember all the particulars, but he described it, and he said something to the effect of, in the way that can only happen in a dream. It wasn't meant to be real. He was basically supported up in the air. He was on like two sticks, like if he was on a couch sort of thing, where in the real world, he totally would have fallen off. I mean, it was not a safe place to be. But he said in the dream that he knew if he just rested there, that he was completely safe and that he wouldn't fall. And that's always stuck with me. And I think through all his ups and downs, I think ultimately he did have a faith that helped him and kept him secure, even when he didn't feel secure or didn't look secure.
It definitely kept him here because he was massively depressed and bouts of depression. And it definitely kept him here. And creating something kept him here until he had that turn, that, serving the good idea, that revelation. I don't think that meant it was all roses after that. But his writing definitely changes more toward, it's still somewhat haunting, but you do remember it in this idea of a positive way.
Yeah.
So he wrote an essay, I think, called What is Art? And he defines art. And I thought for someone who, was such a massive writer, prolific, that this was interesting. He defined it as that human activity which consists in one man's consciously conveying to others, by certain external signs, the feelings that he has experienced, and in others being infected by those feelings and also experiencing them. I think the word infected is kind of gross, but I mean, it kind of comes across in how he tells stories, where it really does kind of dig in deep, and it's not all positive, but you are impacted by it.
Yeah. Well, you see, where my mind goes with that lets that word infection be positive is, like usual, back to C.S. Lewis, where he talks about the concept of good infection in mere Christianity, the idea that it's not just bad things that can do it, how there's this good infection where goodness can spread. And then we also saw that in Man Alive, because that was what one of the characters discovered when he was speaking to the doctor, was he said, I've learned that, what was it, happiness is catching? Health is catching too. And so I like that description. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah, and that all art, whatever external signs you use as your medium, you're conveying something about your own feelings and emotions in that expression. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought that word infecting was really interesting. It's a powerful word.
Yeah, I wonder what it is in Russian, if it has the same connotation as we hear it in English.
I wonder that a lot with this book in general, because any translation you're relying on the interpreter translators to relay it to us. So I'm sure yours is different than mine. So I'm curious if there's any quotes that we use where it's wildly different. You have to let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested in that too. While we're talking about kind of Russian literature, I think we should set the stage a little bit further on this. So this book takes place in Tsarist Russia. So this is not communist Russia. This is the Russia of the Tsars. So that means that this is very much Russian Orthodox Christianity and the Tsar. There's an emperor basically who's in control of everything, and that does determine a little bit how the story goes. The other thing are the names I find interesting. And so we have, Russian names in this, like Ivan and Pyotr and Fyodor and, names along those lines. But there's a couple things that I've learned about Russian names. There's also usually the second name that is called a patronym. So, for example, Ivan Ilyich is Ivan, the son of Ilya. So the Ilya-ich. Or if there's a name like Petrovich, it's the son of Petrov. And so that itch on the end of it is a son of, and so you can determine who the father is. But there's also a family name on the end of it that doesn't seem to come up as often. The family name of Ivan, I believe, is Golovin. And so there's also a family name that gets used less frequently. That's the third name that comes up.
Golovin. I don't know. I pretended to have a Russian accent there for a moment. Golovin. It's a cool language, truly. I wish I spoke more of it than I do, which is like 0. I used to know a little, but it's gone.
Well, then you can reach that dream.
It's gone. But there must be more than just those, because in my translation, his wife, when in the rare moments when she's feeling affectionate, she calls him Jean.
Mm-hmm. That's in my translation
What
too.
is that? Is that just like an endearment? Like you also have an endearment name, like a personal name?
I think there are. Now, that one I couldn't quite figure out, and I have to confess I didn't look it up. I should have. But if we go to like the Brothers Karamazov, the main character, the protagonist is named Alexei. So Alexei, but they always call him Alyosha. And so there are these diminutive forms of the names that are just part of Russian speech, kind of this personal, friendly, gentle pet name almost for it, but they're standardized.
Yeah.
So when you hear, sometimes the same character will have several of these different names, and a lot of it is this kind of pet name that's being applied to them. And I wondered if Jean was one of those for Ivan.
Yeah, you just got to get it by context because it's not explained. He just has many names, but we're going to call him Ivan. Ivan Ilyich.
Well, and is Ivan Russian for John?
I don't know.
I'm always surprised at how many cultures John gets transliterated in something else. And sometimes it makes sense, like, Juan in Hispanic language. It took me a long time to realize that Sean in the Celtic languages is the same as John. And I wonder if maybe Ivan is the same as John. And so then a French version of it, Jean, would make sense in this setting. So that's my best guess on it. There was a lot of overlap between kind of French literature and Russian literature. Tolstoy himself traveled to France. He met Victor Hugo. They thought highly of each other. And then if you read through War and Peace, one of the scenes that stands out to me from that is the Russian general who was fighting against Napoleon. Tolstoy says he basically didn't do much. He just kind of hung out in his tent and read French novels. And like there was this whole argument that, the Russian court actually spoke French better than Napoleon did because he was Corsican and not actually French. And so I do think so I'm going to go with that. My guess is that Ivan is the Russian form of John. So we're going with Jean, like Jean-Luc Picard. She is doing a French gentle version of it.
There's a lot of French in my book that is not translated. Kind of the joie de vivre, the kind of French phrases that are part of this as well. So he definitely used them, spoke French himself. Absolutely. So I wrote down at the beginning of this book that it's kind of looking at Ivan's life backwards, because we start with a group of judges kind of taking a break from the courtroom. They're reading the paper, and one of them, Pyotr, says, "Gentlemen, Ivan Ilyich is dead." We start where he is already passed, and the rest of the book goes through his life backward.
Yeah. That's exactly how this progresses. And the first chapter is pretty fascinating. So there's 12 total chapters in my version of this. I assume that's standardized. And they're not all the same length. Some of them are really short and others of them are longer. This first chapter is really where we get to learn of the death. I mean, that right off the bat. And then we get to see people who have interacted with him in his life. We get to meet his friends and colleagues, and we get to meet his wife. And it's all in the setting of this Russian Orthodox funeral service. That was fascinating to me. I've had a little bit of experience with that when I worked up in Alaska, strong Russian Orthodox community up there. And so when somebody would pass, there would be this kind of 24-hour vigil that would happen where family and friends would stay up with the body through the night, usually reading scripture. And so there were all these traditions, but one of the traditions is definitely a viewing coffin where you see the deceased and it's expected that you come and you're a part of this. And so that kind of Russian Orthodox funeral tradition is a big part of this first chapter.
Yeah, for sure. But these men who learn of the death, it points out they don't think kind thoughts about Ivan. It doesn't make them remember him. They all immediately think about themselves, their position at work, how they might get a promotion or transfers. Like it's going to shake up the courtroom. Evidently, Ivan, too, was a judge. He was a magistrate, and we learn more about his career. But these men who, it says that they knew and worked with Ivan, and they all liked him. But their first thought is immediately about the position.
Yeah, my translation says, the first thought of each of those present was its possible effect in the way of transfer or promotion for themselves or their associates. So exactly, the first thing they thought of is, what am I going to get out of this?
And out loud, his best friend, we learn Pyotr, the guy who reads the paper and announces his death, basically says in Russian, "That's a crying shame." So sad. Gone too soon.
Tolstoy even uses the line, again in my translation, his so-called friends,
Yeah.
as they're trying to decide how to do their duty here. They know they've got to go visit the widow. They know they've got to go participate in the funeral, but how can they do it as little as possible and still look like they care? It's
Yeah.
pretty bleak.
It is. One man's like, man, that's all the way across the river. It's really far. But I mean, they're like, doesn't he have a wife? Does she have money? No. It's a very callous way to be both informed and to interpret the death of someone that you've worked with and presumably cared about.
It's also a great example of that internalization we were talking about with Russian literature, because the whole passage in this are just the thought process of Pyotr as he's attending and walking through the building and deciding, okay, here is appropriate for me to cross myself. Do I have to bow too? I'll do a half bow and I'll cross myself. And then in another spot, okay, now I need to cross myself. And then as he's conversing with other people, how sad to look, when to kind of wink at somebody. It's really an interesting thought process of what he's thinking on the inside. And honestly, I think most of us can identify and relate with that. That's chilling. A lot of Russian literature is chilling because we see in ourselves things that we wouldn't want to admit. I would not want to admit that my brain works the way Pyotr's does here, but it does. And I think everyone's does. And I think that's some of the genius that we see already in this first chapter.
Oh, the whole book. You can feel yourself in different aspects of different characters, even though there aren't that many of them. It said that Pyotr, his best of friend as Ivan had, he has inward feelings of joy because there's something about still being alive when somebody dies. So glad it's him and not me.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something I think people deal with when people die, and then the guilt you feel after thinking that or feeling that. But Pyotr does. But yeah, he's worried he's not going to get to his card game.
Whist comes back in this book.
Whist and Vant. Vant. I think it's French
Oh,
game.
mine just says whist.
There are two card games. So
I think mine translates the other one bridge.
It is very similar to bridge. I did look it up. It's a lot more competitive than just whist. There's a lot more complexities of betting in it. So it's a lot more like bridge. So it's like whist, but more so.
Okay.
So the whist is like the really friendly version. And then if you're really good, you play Vant. But I like this. It says Pyotr, he's going into the room where the body is lying and he's looking at his friend. But it says, as always happens, he had some perplexity about what he was to do when he got there. And then it describes the half bow and the crossing himself. And mine pointed out that at some point the crossing was too much. Stop. Feeling that out socially. But he's looking at his friend who's lying there dead. I mean, have you ever been to a viewing?
Mm-hmm.
I remember one, only one. How many have you done?
Well, as a doctor, I have seen a number of dead bodies in terms of a formal viewing where they've actually dressed the corpse. You know what? I think probably only one. It was our grandpa.
Yeah, Grandpa Albert. And I don't think that's as common anymore for any number of reasons. But he's looking at his friend and he's describing how he's still himself. It's still Ivan there, but he's heavy and yellow, and clearly he's gone. His soul is gone. But I like this quote from mine. It says, his face was more handsome, more significant than it had been in life. There was on his face the expression that what needed to be done had been done, and done rightly. And Pyotr feels some reproach with that, like it's trying to tell him something he should know. He doesn't like that reminder, so he leaves.
Yeah, quickly.
As
soon as he can. We are confronted by death. There is a dead man here. Pyotr is in the room with the dead man, but somehow he managed to sidestep the concept of death. And we're going to see that over and over and over, that the reality of death can never be escaped. None of us make it out of this alive, and we all know that. But it is amazing how you can put your blinders onto it and choose not to see it. And that's illustrated very well here.
Yeah, there's a couple things about that I wanted to mention. So, actually, our EP mentioned memento mori, which is Latin for remember that you die. I think that comes from the Stoics, if I'm not mistaken. Marcus Aurelius, the book, you actually mentioned that in the Rome Short too, where he wrote this great book. But the value of remembering that you die in the end, that's what happens on this side of heaven. And it also took me to Psalm 90 from Moses. Teach me to number my days so that I may gain a heart of wisdom.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things, and there's so much about death. Everybody kind of thinks about it. I think none of us think about it maybe as much as we should. I don't. It's very easy to get distracted by the card game tonight, right? That's all Piotr wants to do is go play cards. I think this book emphasizes the need and the comfort, actually, of looking at it ahead of it being imminent. And Piotr's annoyed because he gets called upon to comfort the widow.
Yes. And we learn so much during this scene. The widow talks about the final days of Ivan Ilyich and the fact that he screamed nonstop for 3 days. This was not a gentle passing. He died in agony, prolonged suffering leading up to it. And she talks about how hard that is on her, that how hard that was on everybody participating and having to be in the house and listen to that. The other thing we learn from the widow is that she wants to have a conversation with Piotr, specifically about the pension, about how much money she can get now that Ivan Ilyich is dead. And this is a really well-crafted conversation. Again, it's disturbing, it's haunting, because Piotr learns really fast that she knows exactly how much money she's going to get. And what she's trying to figure out is, can I eke out a little more? Is there some mechanism or way that I can make more money out of this? And again, not to be hard on her. I mean, she's lost her husband. She's lost her support. This is how she's going to live for the rest of her life. But it is interesting that that's the focus of the conversation with his friend at the viewing.
I think there's a lot here, actually, because of the stuff. So she pulls him into the drawing room, okay? And Piotr immediately notices the clock on the wall because Ivan decorated that room himself. He was always proud of it. And he sits down on a poof.
Mine translated it poof. I was going to ask you. Yeah.
It's like, how do you describe a poof?
I think it's just a fluffy pillow. I think it's a fluffy pillow, isn't it? Kind of a poofy pillow.
But it has structure, so you can sit on it, like a little couch ottoman thing. But apparently, the place still looks nice, but it's all a little bit broken. He sits down on this poof, and she's going to warn him not to. Oh, it's a little bit off, and she catches her I think it's a grieving shawl. It's lace on like something sticking out of a piece of furniture, and so he gets up off this broken thing because there's a snag on a piece of furniture. So the stuff is really important in this story because it meant so much to Ivan. We learn more about him and just how much the stuff means, not just to him, but also to his wife and family. But all the stuff is a little off. You know, it's nice, but it's not that nice. And the wife, because she is grieving, it's sensitive because, of course, she'd be devastated, but she makes it about her. There's no mention about Ivan's suffering. 3 days of howling was so hard for her.
Yeah.
Not this man in the grips of agony. And she says, I do everything myself. There's an attitude of martyrdom that comes across even in this conversation. And Piotr just wants out.
Yeah.
He basically realizes that, she realizes that he cannot help her get any more money out of the system. So then she just wants him to go away.
She changes the topic in such a way that he recognizes that, and he's like, oh, good, I'm gone, and is able to leave.
She does say that before Ivan died, that he asked for his young son to be taken away. Because he was in this howling agony, but he had enough consciousness at some point to ask for his young son to be taken away. And we learned that they have a daughter who's engaged. She's in her early 20s.
Yeah, young.
And then this school-age boy who's, I think, 13 or so. And when Piotr leaves, he sees, the daughter. He sees the fiance. They just seem angry,
Mhm.
but the son is devastated
Yes.
and embarrassed by being tearful and sad, as only a 13-year-old boy could be. I feel like that's conveyed really well.
I think so too. It
It-
really shows that interaction and it makes you wonder what was Ivan's relationship with these people, with his children, with his wife.
and then Pyotr's like, hey, I can still make the card game.
It's a good ending to the chapter. There's two other things that struck me on this first chapter. One is that Pyotr does start to really think about death and shuts it down immediately. The line I wrote down was Pyotr Ivanovich found the fresh air particularly pleasant after the smell of incense, dead body, and disinfectant. I mean, he was turning from this to fresh air and then cards because he originally wasn't going to go play cards, but he just needed to after all this, and it was a way of taking his mind off it. The other character we meet in this first chapter is Gerasim, the butler's assistant. And he is interesting because of everyone there, he's the one who still seems to be the most cheerful. He actually is doing his job. He's got enthusiasm. And he says to Pyotr, it's God's will. We shall all come to it someday. And so he's the one character that seems to have accepted the concept of death and knows that there's no getting out of it. And we meet him here briefly in this first chapter.
Yeah, and it's evident because he acts differently. He appears differently. It's just conveyed so well here that this death of this man and their family and friend, it's treated as an inconvenience, for the people left living. There's nobody there with the exception maybe of the young son, whose name is Vyasa, I think, who seems particularly upset. They all say the right thing, and it says that Pyotr says it, and he's moved and she's moved. It's enough to call out tears, and that's great. But that's it.
Mm-hmm. We then move into chapter 2. And in chapter 2, we get the story of Ivan Ilyich's life was of the simplest, most ordinary, and therefore most terrible.
Yeah, these are all Tolstoy's opinions on what matters and what didn't matter. So we learned that he died at age 45. He was not very old. He was a career judge, a magistrate. His father worked in the ministry, whatever that means.
Right.
It meant position. So even as his father aged, he still held position in the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Ivan had a position. The social status was definitely a priority in their family.
Very much so. And Ivan is one of 3. He had 2 brothers, an older and a younger, so he's the middle. And in many ways, the middle in terms of temperament as well. He had one brother that was very cold, very aloof, very firm. He had one brother that was just a wild man and, a prodigal, wasted all his money. And Ivan was kind of in the middle. He was affable. People liked him. He did his duty, he did his job, and he was fairly trustworthy.
Mine says the pride of the family in
Oh.
French. But yeah, and it says an intelligent, lively, pleasant, and decent man. He went to law school like his father wanted him to. He did pretty well. He did all that was so considered good by highly placed people. And it says from the beginning of his life, from early on, he was drawn like a fly to light to those high society people, high society manners, views, habits. He always had his eye towards what people in high places thought was good and worth doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, promotion, elevation maybe is a better way of thinking about it. He cared about the social structure, and he wanted to be as high as he could be in that social structure. And so it meant almost without thinking, he absorbed those. If the people above him thought something was right, he thought it was right. If the people above him thought something was important, he thought it was important, and he lived his life accordingly. It also meant that if there were things that they didn't find important, he didn't find it so important. And that includes things like some morals. I mean, he was pretty willing to have an affair at a young age. I mean, he was pretty willing to live kind of youthful and wild, but it never got in the way of his work. He was able to split those two things apart where when he's doing his job, he's doing his job. And when he's not, he is doing kind of whatever he wants, but in such a way as to emulate those that he thought were above him.
Yeah, it's described as, well, nothing too bad, but this is a quote. because I do think this is a learned way of behaving. It says, in law school, he had committed acts which had formerly seemed to him of great vileness and had inspired a feeling of self-loathing in him at the time he committed them. But subsequently, seeing that such acts were also committed by highly placed people and were not considered bad, he, without really thinking them good himself, forgot all about them and was not troubled in the least by the memory of them. So whatever his conscience told him, he turned that off, shut that down, because people in high places, the people he wanted to be like, said, well, it's not too bad. We all do it.
Mm-hmm.
But so he goes through law school.
I think it's in law school that he meets Piotr.
Yes.
So the friend, the colleague that he's with him to his death, that he meets at his death, he has a long relationship with him. So
He does, but Ivan gets promoted faster.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's all about position. But he graduates, he gets some money from his dad, he buys the right clothes, he does the right things, and he gets a job. He gets appointed because he has connections, and he seeks out a pleasant and proper life. My book uses the idea of a pleasant life, and very decent and pleasant, over and over and over. That these were the things that he prioritized, and as long as they fit inside of that, pleasant and decent, all good.
Yeah, with the emphasis on decent and pleasant for him, that everything fits into his day-to-day. He wanted it to just all function, to all work. And there wasn't a lot of outward thought. It didn't really matter what was happening to those around him. It was his life that was his focus and his center.
Yeah, he's described as very playful and witty. He really learns to play the game. I mean, that's part of the cards, truly. They're playing literal games with cards, but also this social game. Mine describes him as a foppish lawyer at some point.
I like it. And he loves being a lawyer, and he loves, as he moves up through the ranks of this, into judgeship is basically the way I viewed it. Or, I mean, he's a prosecutor for a while. He rises through the ranks, and it talks about how he's always very nice to people. I mean, he doesn't abuse his power. He doesn't lean into people. They think he does a good job, but internally that's not what he's thinking. Here it says in mine, he liked to make them feel that here he was, who had the power to crush, treating them in this simple, friendly way. Yeah. And so even the kindness he's demonstrating is something he sort of gets off on, that he's got this power to destroy them, but in his mercy and goodness, he's refraining, and he likes that.
It's a game. It's a power play. So it says that he's very conscious of it, and yet he never would misuse it, because that is against his own decency, sense of decency. And he says it's the best part of his new job. You know, as he moves up, he plays each role. He learns what's expected of him. So as he's starting out, he's much more friendly. As he grows in rank as a judge, he learns to keep a dignified distance from those beneath him. I think at some point he distances himself from Piotr, the friend at the beginning. Mm-hmm. That's not called out specifically, but he does move up quicker, which would mean there would be a gap. But he gets more money. He plays more cards. He's having a great time. And then he gets a wife.
Yeah, he meets a girl. And even this is not... To those of us who have read a great deal of romance and love poetry and the idea of the overwhelming consuming passion, that is not what this is. It was just time to get married.
Well, he dances occasionally to show that he is good at it, but chooses not to on a regular basis. So when he does, it's special. And this lady falls in love with him as they dance, which is very one-time romantic. Mm-hmm. It's not a lot to build a life on.
I would agree with that. It does remind me of one of the great quotes from The Wheel of Time. Do you remember this one with Matrim Cotham?
No.
Dance with her, and she will forgive much. Dance with her well, and she will forgive everything.
But Matt doesn't just get married. His is a little more complex than that.
Quite. So,
different story.
Moving on. So this young woman, I think it's fascinating the way this is described here. It says, Praskovia Fyodorovna came of a good family, was not bad looking, and there was a little bit of property. Ivan Ilyich might have aspired to a more brilliant marriage, but even this was quite a worthy match. So again, he's moving up. This is a good match, but he's not that greedy, I guess, is what I take out of this. He's okay doing well. He doesn't need to be the best. He doesn't need to be the top. He doesn't need to drive himself crazy trying to reach above himself, but he's always going upwards, including with his marriage.
Yeah, I think it's one step at a time. Very incremental, as long as we're moving up. So perfectly respectable. They got married.
This reminds me a little bit. Are you familiar with Epicureanism as a philosophy?
I am not familiar with that ism.
Epicureanism essentially devotes itself to the maximization of pleasure, but even more so to the avoidance of pain. And so when people use the word Epicurean in modern language, they tend to mean people who really like good food and really like nice things and are trying to maximize pleasure. But that's not the way the old philosophy was really done. It was really more about avoiding pain. And so modest pleasures, good, in part because even if you don't get it, you're not going to be crushed. It's not going to drop you down. And so this really seems to be that model, right? Wanting more, wanting to improve himself, but not wanting to take risks, not reaching himself so far out that it's going to cause him trouble.
That's very good, because I think that's exactly avoiding pain, and yet pain comes.
Oh, it does.
Oh, that's really interesting, brother. Okay, so they get married and are happy. You know, they have a honeymoon phase, but then she gets pregnant. She gets jealous. She wants him home sometimes. It says that he thinks that she just wants him home to be as bored as she was.
Ivan, come on, man.
They're not on the same page pretty early on, but he doesn't like those disruptions. That's painful. He doesn't want to fight. He doesn't want to talk about it. So the man becomes a workaholic.
As his wife grew more irritable and exacting, so Ivan Ilyich transferred the center of gravity of his existence from his home life to his work. He became increasingly fond of the official functions and more ambitious than he had ever been before.
Yeah, he wants the cheerful pleasantness only. And when he gets that at home, great. And if it's not like that, he goes back to work.
And this goes back to that, I think, the avoiding pain. He's found a way that he can avoid suffering. This is unpleasant. The work of family was unpleasant to him, so he's just not going to do it. He's going to switch it off to work.
And he gets promoted again, and that really helps him. So he can ignore his wife's attitude. He makes enough money that they can kind of send the kids to school, although she kind of gets one in on him and sends it to their boy to a school that he wouldn't have picked.
Right.
They're so petty.
Yeah.
But if you never address it, it just gets worse. But they're covering it up with a lot of shiny stuff. The salary was higher, but life was more expensive. So they are having a great time. Going to shows, going to theaters, hosting events, soirees like crazy, but they are living outside their means. And there's anger at home, estrangement. But in those high society people that he respects so much, that's normal.
Yeah, that's true.
So for him, okay, this is what men should do. This is the process. You take the pleasantness when it's there and you work the rest of the time, and then you get to advance. All good.
He gets depressed, though. He can do this for a while, but eventually it eats at him. They go on a vacation. They go to a home, and it says they do this to save money, because if they go on this vacation, they're not spending all this money doing other stuff.
It's the money burden that makes him depressed. He just doesn't make enough money.
And it's being there where he doesn't have work anymore. Because he's on vacation, he can't leave to go to work. And so he has to deal with his family. He has to be a part of it and around it. And his brain can't be distracted the way he's able to do when he is at his employment. And so he comes to a decision that he's going to go to Moscow. He is going to go and he is going to find a job that pays more. And he is committed, and he does. He goes to Moscow.
Yeah, the other part of his being depressed, though, was that he made a mistake at work. He got passed up for a promotion that he expected.
Yes, that's true. I forgot about that.
He skipped one of those incremental moving up, and he got angry. He kind of throws a temper tantrum at his boss, which is a mistake. And it says it's the hardest year of his life. So they are broke, and he feels forgotten at work, which is what he's giving most of his time to. And yeah, he decides that he needs more money.
Can I do a quick Roman digression?
Sure.
There is something called the cursus honorum in the Roman world. And this was a very formalized progression that you go through the ranks of public service, where you start at a low level, and then there are certain time and age requirements where you go to the next rung of the ladder and the next rung of the ladder. And if everything is perfect, you end up as consul at a certain age. I can't remember what the age was, but you're competing against everyone around you. And so there's only so many that can go to the next rung of the ladder. And so if you get knocked off that, you are forever going to be behind your peers that have made it to the next rung of the ladder. And so this to me is very much a cursus honorum situation, where he was going up as expected, but this is his first loss of the rung. And he's not okay with that. And this is where he's going to go and try and jump back on that ladder with a higher paying job.
Well, the crazy part is it works. It says, this is a quote, astonishing, unexpected success. He goes, he talks to his connections. Turns out there's this crazy upheaval at the ministry, and he knows the right people and it's the right time. So he gets a post in his old department, but like 2 steps higher than his old colleague, the guys he went to college with. He's suddenly super promoted, and it says he is completely happy.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely, so is his wife. This is what she wants. More money, bigger house. They're back on the same page. So they have this temporary truce. They both want the same stuff now.
And part of it is that he has to go to this new city where he's working before her. So there's also separation, and they tend to do better when they're not together. So yeah, they can join in on these same goals of money, bigger house, prestige, and they don't have to deal with each other. Mm-hmm. And so that makes them happier between each other. And this, I love this scene because we get kind of middle-aged Ivan here, right? He's got his big job. He's got a house that he feels was made just for him. It feels perfect. And he throws himself into interior decorating. This is his life. The drapes, the furniture. How do I make this look sophisticated and wealthy? I mean, he'll be sitting in court and he's just thinking about, curtains. He's thinking about what he's going to do to the house. And he feels like he's nailing it. Like he's just got it down. Tolstoy makes some asides that, yeah, this is what happens when people who aren't really wealthy all of a sudden get a little money. They make this house that they think looks rich, but really just looks like kind of new money. It's pretty funny.
He fulfills his dreams of stuff. I mean, it is intense. He takes great pride in decorating the house, so much so that he lies to his family because they're not there. So he's writing to them by letter and how it's okay coming together. But he's so pleased with it. Even the upholstery, he decorates it with antiques, to make it really give that right flavor. It grew exquisite and approached that ideal which he had formed for himself in his mind. I have to tell a personal story because this one cracks me up. I think the biggest fight my husband and I had in the first, decade of our marriage was over a hypothetical garbage can that he would have in a hypothetical study in a hypothetical house in our future. I feel like Ivan did that. He got the garbage can. The thing is amazing. He even climbs up high to show an uncomprehending upholsterer how to do something.
That's right. He's doing it wrong.
He gets up high on his ladder and he trips and falls.
Yeah, I think this is such an important thing. I'm going to read the line out. Once, when mounting a stepladder to show a workman who did not understand how he wanted some material draped, he made a false step and slipped. But being a strong and agile person, he clung on and only knocked his side against the knob of the window frame. This bruise was painful, but it was soon passed off.
Yeah, and I wrote down that quote about basically the stuff. I've never been a stuff person, so this doesn't resonate with me at all. I know that this is a common thing, when things are trendy and you got to have the right shoes or the right bag, but I've never felt that. So this is really interesting to me. He said, essentially, though, it's the same as with all people who are not exactly rich, but they want to resemble the rich, and for that reason, only resemble each other. all that all people of a certain kind acquire in order to resemble all people of a certain kind.
Hmm.
That's interesting to me, this like social requirement to advance more, like the stuff that would show that you have the life that you were working toward. I don't know.
Well, you're an MBA. Did you see it in that community?
Boston's full of old money. I cannot fathom it. It's just never been my life.
I saw it in the military somewhat. I mean, because people will come into the military and there's sort of an expectation, particularly among the officers, of what your house should be, what your family should be. And so I definitely saw it there. You see it a little bit in the medical community too. I mean, we grew up dirt poor. We came from nothing. But when you enter medicine, all of a sudden there's all these people who have money. And it's interesting that I have seen this a few times, that
I've seen it. I don't feel that tug. I mean, when you don't have stuff growing up, you don't have as much of a draw to it, maybe, or maybe that's just me. It actually, there's another story, the Laura Ingalls Wilder books. I forget which one. They get sick. They get horribly sick, like near death. I don't remember scarlet fever or what, but they've all been near death's door. And I think it's a parson comes to visit, and Ma is shocked. The house is not put together. Everything's just dismal. They've been sick for months. And I think it's Laura says something like, hey, we live here. If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for him. Because it's not about the stuff. It's about what happens in the house. That's from a story we did too. Which one is that? Man Alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so this is just a really interesting thing to me, this idea of social status, that you have to have it look a certain way, and it makes him so happy. That's the thing. He's not even feigning this. It satisfies something in him that now he's made the next level, that next step on the rung. And when his family comes from out of town, they all call it charming. Everybody tells him, oh, it's charming. That's the word. And his wife asks about how he fell, and he laughs it off. Just a bruise.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing. Well, not so much. The beginning of this next chapter, I think, really sets the tone well. It says, the whole family was in good health. Ivan Ilyich sometimes complained of a queer taste in his mouth and a sort of uncomfortable feeling on the left side of the stomach, but one could hardly call that illness. But that's how this starts.
It grows into this, mine says, constant heaviness, and he starts to be really cranky at mealtime. Like, eating is unpleasant. Even his wife even figures it out, and she doesn't care for her husband particularly, but she kind of figures out, oh, it's the food. There's something about eating that displeases him, makes him crabby with everything else. And it's interesting because now they have this perfect home. It's always lacking just a little. Yeah. There's always something else to get, something a little wrong.
If we only had one more room, if that room was shaped a little bit different, yeah, it's just not quite right.
And he describes here how Ivan at work, though, is just a rock star.
Masterful.
It says he was always capable of separating the official when he needed to and of discarding the human. He could play the game like a virtuoso. I mean, just perfect. He knew the rules. He knew how to navigate the both the law and the personal demeanor. I mean, this guy was good. But there's tension in the family again because they're starting to overreach in terms of money and spending. Mm-hmm. So even though they had the perfect house and it was all great, it's already kind of twisted.
Yeah. And finally, his wife talks him into seeing a doctor. I love this because that's always the case. It's always the wife that talks the guy into going to see the doctor. This whole passage I just loved because I am a doctor. And so watching this it just made me laugh, and it was eye-opening and cutting, and I saw myself on both sides of it, and it was really interesting because, yeah, everyone who comes to me, usually older men or middle-aged men are like, yeah, my wife made me come. And so, yep, okay, that makes sense. But then Ivan talks about the interaction with the doctor because he recognizes it. He is a professional himself, and he knows the airs he puts on when he is standing in court. He knows what happens to his voice, the way he speaks different, the way he talks different when he's in court. And he's recognizing this as the doctor is speaking to him. He can see it, and it's so true. I mean, family has always kind of accused me. They talk about my doctor voice, where all of a sudden I'll just start speaking differently, and I don't notice it, but it's a thing. And you see that in this interaction, and you can also see that the doctor is viewing this as a puzzle to be solved. This man is hurting, and he's trying, the doctor in all the best ways is trying to come up with why he's hurting, but it's not really that he cares about the guy. It's that it's a puzzle. This is my job. And the doctor is doing his job just like Ivan does in court. And Ivan feels just belittled by this whole thing.
I think it's also your wife who makes you go to the doctor.
She has once.
I'll point that out, but
Yeah. I don't go very often, so yeah.
But the doctor, it's like he's putting on airs, and so Ivan identifying the game, it really irks him.
Yeah.
Because he's so good at his game, but he's got this heaviness, this pain, this weird taste. It's strange. And I think he also finds it kind of pointless. Like the guy is like tapping and asking and the thing. This is a quote from mine. It says, "The doctor said, such and such indicates that there is such and such inside you. But if that is not confirmed by the analysis of this and that, then it must be assumed you have such and such," and so on. Wah, wah, wah.
And we do that all the time because that's the way we think. Oh, it's probably this, but here's the 7 things behind it that it might be, depending on what this lab shows or what this shows. So again, I could identify on both sides of it, and I think I just think all doctors should read this passage.
There's mention of a floating kidney or appendicitis, but his wife thinks, take your medicine, listen to the doctor's orders, you'll be fine. Just do what you are told.
So I did some research on this because floating kidney is not a common diagnosis in modern parlance, but it is a thing. So if you have more than a 5-centimeter shift in your kidney from moving from a supine to a standing position, that would be considered a floating kidney. 90% of the time is harmless, and there's no point in even diagnosing it because it doesn't do anything. About 10% of the time, it can cause some abdominal discomfort. We now have some surgeries to fix it. So in case anybody is reading this and wondering, that's the current state of floating kidney in medicine.
I assumed it was cancer.
He doesn't have floating kidney.
No, cancer wasn't a thing diagnosed at that time, was it?
It was, but we couldn't image inside the body.
Yeah.
And so right now we can do a CT scan, we can do an ultrasound, we can do an MRI, we can catch cancer early, and we're far more aware of it. He clearly has cancer. I mean, I think that's what's going on with him.
With the taste in the mouth and all that?
Yeah, I think he's probably got a stomach or esophageal cancer as the cause of it. I don't think the fall had anything to do with it. That was the other thing that I kind of chuckled at about this, or I thought was interesting, because people will come into the office insisting that this was the cause of my problem. And you kind of nod and smile and realize, no, that had nothing to do with it, but okay. And so he's convinced that fall was the cause of his problem, but no, he was probably going to die no matter what. Stomach cancer, you just don't. I mean, even today, it's almost impossible to treat.
Yeah, I should point out, all of this is in Ivan's head. It's like we were looking back through his thoughts as he was experiencing these things. And he feels bad for himself and belittled by the doctor. And he asks a question. This is interesting. The doctor calls it an inappropriate question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not allowed to ask, basically, am I going to die?
And I think all doctors should read this book to understand what a patient can think and what's going through their head, because this happens where a doctor will say, I'm not answering that right now. So I'm a family physician, which means I see all sorts of stuff across the board, but I'm not a specialist in anything. But as a family physician, especially in my training, I would admit people to the hospital. And it was not uncommon when I was in residency and I was working hospitals for somebody to be admitted that I knew they were going to die, that they were not going to leave the hospital, because when I got their chart, they had had metastatic cancer for the last, 3 years. Everything was failing. It's clear this is the end for them. And we're telling them, call your family to come say goodbye to you. What's interesting is almost universally, they were surprised. Usually their oncologists, their cancer specialists had never told them you're going to die, because we don't use those words. We talk about, here's what we can do for you. We always speak from a position of hope, and it is very rare for a doctor to honestly tell a patient, yeah, I think you got 3 months left. Now, part of that is that's a quick way to look like an idiot, because as soon as you tell the patient they're going to die in 3 months, they're going to live for another 5 years just to spite you. And, you could use that as a tactic, which is kind of fun too. But
Risky.
yeah, there is something about the practice of medicine, and I don't know if this is just Western culture or what, but where we are very hesitant to be honest about that and to say, no, this is going to take your life. And it is amazing how many patients will get to the end, literally admitting to the hospital to die, that's the first time anybody's had that conversation with them.
Mm. I have a couple friends who are hospice nurses. I don't think they work together, but both of them have told me separately, do not hide the fact of death from your kids. Because I do think culturally we do that. There aren't 24-hour vigils. You don't smell the body as it decays because it's been sitting around too long after the soul is gone. It's not something people see, maybe unless they deal with animals, perhaps something like that. But the idea that death is a fact and something to be confronted ahead of it happening and accepted at some point. I'm not claiming like, oh, I got this. That too is in Man Alive, where it's like it's a great mistake for any man,
Yeah.
any person to think that they understand death. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying culturally, it's really not part of what we talk about. And I do think that's of great value in this story.
Yes. And in this chapter specifically, there's a few things that are starting to develop. One is we have his body starting to fail him. So, this body that has always worked pretty well for him, done everything he wants it to do, it is now hurting him constantly. He has this pain in his side that he cannot get rid of. The other thing that is failing him is his constructed world of pleasure, this world of things he enjoys. He loves playing cards, just loves it. He gets so excited about it. And I mean, he was neglecting his family for the joy of playing cards. He goes and plays a game at the end of this chapter, and he gets a killer hand. I mean, it should be just an absolutely dominant hand, but he's distracted. He screws up the play on it. He doesn't get the grand slam. He still wins the hand, but it's not this achievement that it would have been for him. And he realizes two things. One, he's really angry at himself that he didn't play this right. And two, he is crushed that he realized that even if he had played it right and got the grand slam, he wouldn't have enjoyed it. He can't enjoy it anymore because his world is falling apart on him, and he's not prepared for that. I mean, are any of us? I mean, he certainly is not.
No, it says that his life is poisoned for him, and it poisons the life of those around him. And that poison is growing, it's getting stronger. I mean, he can't sleep for the pain and the fear. It's not just that he has physical pain, he has mental anguish as he, at this point, is avoiding looking back at his life. It says that the pain did not diminish, but he tried to make himself think that he was better. Follow doctor's orders. I'm going to do it exactly. But his wife and family, they avoid him. His pain, his suffering, it disrupts their comfort, their pattern, their happy pleasures. So there's more fights, and he thinks of them as setbacks. Like, well, I would be getting better, except we keep having these fights, and that makes me worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like his anger is killing him. It's making this small problem even worse. It's a sad series of events.
Oh, yeah. And it doesn't get any happier. In the next chapter, his brother-in-law comes to visit, and his brother-in-law hasn't seen him for a while. And when there is that initial encounter, I don't know how many of you have seen somebody who is wasted by disease. I mean, we've seen people lose weight, we've seen people gain weight, but when you see somebody who has cancer wasting or who has, chronic illness wasting, there's no hiding it and there's no mistaking it. There's a difference between healthy thin and sick thin, and he is now sick thin, and his brother-in-law sees it. And the fact that Ivan sees that reaction in his brother-in-law is just one more blow. It's one more injury to him, that this body is wasting away on him, and he can't hide it. I mean, he's always done a good job of separating his personal life from his work, right? To compartmentalize. And now just the appearance of his body is portraying him, and he can't stop it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The brother-in-law sees it. It's evident, but he still won't acknowledge it. He tells his sister, Ivan's wife, he says, he's a dead man, talking about Ivan. Look in his eyes. There's no light. But they still treat it like this big secret. Like, you're going to get better.
Mhm.
And at some point in here, Ivan starts to hate the lie. He starts to realize the inevitability of what's happening to him. And he just gets angry
Mhm.
that no one will acknowledge the fact that he's dying. Not out loud. It's too uncomfortable for them to say the words. And it says he never gathered the courage. Because at points in time, he wants to yell it, I'm dying.
Mhm.
And he says he never gets the courage to say it out loud.
Yeah.
It's really tragic, but going through his thoughts as he lies there, or I mean, over time, he can just do so much less. It's his mental dialogue, and he starts asking some questions. Dying, death, what is that? He says, where will I be then? No me. Then what? Then what? And he really hates that his wife is happy and alive.
Yeah, the poison between them keeps getting worse and worse. I mean, they didn't have a great relationship to start, and this is taxing it. And at the end of chapter 5, I wrote down this line because it's a gut punch. It says, so she's trying to be kind here. This is where she's using the phrase Jean, and I think she's trying to talk him into seeing a specialist. She's trying to talk him into doing other things and doing more. That doesn't usually help because every time the doctor or the specialist comes in, the first thing she says is, well, he's not doing what he's told. He's not eating right. He's not doing this, that.
He didn't take his medicines right.
Yeah. But at one point she goes to kiss him, I think, here. And the line in my translation is, he hated her from the bottom of his soul while she was kissing him, and with difficulty refrained from pushing her away. He is going into dark, dark places.
And so he starts to go through some logic puzzles in his mind because he'd heard a syllogism. What is a syllogism, brother?
A syllogism comes from the world of formal logic. You propose propositions, and if the propositions lead to a conclusion, you know it is true. So, for example, proposition, if A, then B. Proposition 2, A, conclusion, then B. And so it's a way of basically mathematically making a deductive argument.
And he's familiar with those. He went to school. He's a judge. I mean, he's gone through this. So he had heard that the propositions. Caius is a man. Men are mortal. Therefore, Caius is mortal. But he's like, but not me. For Ivan's way more personal than that. Caius doesn't remember I love these, the silk of his mother's dress or the smell of a favorite toy or all his work that he did. Caius had nothing to do with it. That mortal guy, it says, it cannot be that I should die. It would be too terrible. And he's just trying to run from this fact. But it says that all his former blocks and distractions, they evaporate. He becomes hyper aware of death. He calls it. Even when he's at work, it distracts him. It's partially the pain, but more and more, it's just the fact of dying.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing blocks it out. He's trying all the things, but he actually goes back to the drawing room, that place where he was so happy, pulling his house together with all the things, the place where he got his bruise, and he, acknowledges that thing, the start of all of it. But he wants to rearrange it. He wants to make it even more perfecter. But instead, it just makes him face to face with death.
Is this where he sees the scratch on the table?
Yeah.
He has this highly polished table that he has loved again. He bought it. He went out and searched for it and found it. And not only that, but he arranged the things on the surface. And there's this binder with pictures on the surface of it. And he looks and there's a scratch. And he's horrified that anybody should be so careless as to scratch this. And he looks, and it's because a metal-like edging on the binder has been bent. and this metal edging has scratched it, and the pictures are kind of upside down, and it has not been taken care of by his family. And so he fixes it. He goes through, he puts the pictures right, he bends the binding back up. But I mean, how poignant this thing that should be perfect, that he meant to be perfect and he wanted to be perfect, is now broken and is now causing harm to the environment and things around it. And so I think there's so much in this that's metaphorical for him, this table and this binder that's now not perfect and is causing damage.
So as we're going through his memories, time would pass quickly. 5 years at one job, 5 years at another job. But now that it's kind of honing in on his last weeks, this is now his third month of his illness. Okay, so these last couple chapters have covered 3 months. This is the third month where he's been in increasing pain, both physical and mental. And it says everybody knows now. They just don't know how soon. And his family, they continue to act like it's this great bother. He's just not doing what he should. But I think it's at this point that he has a consolation. There's someone who cared. Because throughout this, he just wanted someone to come sit with him, weep with him,
Pity him.
Yeah.
Feel sorry for him. Feel bad for him.
There's been none of that. It says they don't even know that they don't understand. But that man, Gerasim, I don't know how you say exactly, but the butler's helper, he's this young, vibrant serf. He came from peasantry and he acts as a servant in the house. And he is the only one who takes the time. He acknowledges the fact that Ivan is dying, but without embarrassment. He comes and he sits with him as Ivan sleeps less and less because of the pain. This young man holds his legs in the air. And his wife's like, well, you shouldn't do that. The doctor said not to do that. He has some physical comfort.
Yeah, he feels better. The pain goes down. Yeah, it is so, I don't know how to pronounce it either. I've been pronouncing it Gerasim, is just a wonderful, wonderful character because he knows Ivan's going to die and he doesn't hide from it. But Gerasim also knows that he's going to die.
Someday.
And so he can engage with this because, yeah, you're sick, you're dying. Someone should take care of you, like I hope someone will take care of me when the time comes. And yeah, he'll lie in this contorted position with his legs on Gerasim's shoulders for hours. What an act of love on Gerasim's part. And so mild, he's just there, but it eases the pain. So this is something that Ivan cannot do himself, but it's something that the love of another can take some of the burden. And he does over and over and over again.
Yeah, the idea of him as a caregiver is wonderful. I mean, I've been in the hospital at a time of vulnerability and shame when your body is not responding like you want it to have a good caregiver, like a good nurse. It is night and day difference. This young man is a wonderful caregiver, and it starts for Ivan in just utter shame. Like I think he can't get off the toilet.
Yeah.
He's stuck and he's embarrassed.
He hates the smell. He's looking at his thighs and his legs that are wasted and crippled, and he's just ashamed. He feels dirty and gross and disgusting, but the caregiver is there for him and doesn't make him feel dirty or gross or ashamed. But he also doesn't hide it. He doesn't hide the fact that he's sick and that he's going to die. And you had mentioned this in an earlier chapter, this concept of how much he hated this lie. This constant lie that he's going to be okay, that nobody would talk about death. And this turned me back to a passage from the Screw Tape Letters. For those who haven't read the Screw Tape Letters, go and buy it right now and read them because they are brilliant. Someday I'm sure we'll do it on this podcast. I'm not sure how yet. We'll come up with a way. But what these are a series of satirical letters that C.S. Lewis wrote. And the premise is he is writing from a senior demon to a junior demon to try and help him tempt his patient, a human that they're trying to get damned to hell. And it's funny and witty and profound profound. And in this letter, Screwtape is talking about this idea of death and the knowledge of death, and how it is absolutely the devil's goal to try and hide that from humans. Now, as I read this, remember, everything is flip-flopped. This is coming from the point of view of a demon. So if we talk about the enemy, that's actually God. If we talk about something being good, it's actually bad. So everything is flipped, but I think there's wisdom in this line. And again, this is from chapter 5. How much better for us if all humans died in costly nursing homes, amid doctors who lie, nurses who lie, friends who lie, as we have trained them, promising life to the dying, encouraging the belief that sickness excuses every indulgence, and even, if our workers know their job, withholding all suggestion of a priest, lest should it betray to the sick man his true condition. And how disastrous for us is the continual remembrance of death, which war enforces. So that concept of the lie, but that as a society, as a culture, that even when we mean well, we're doing harm by that. And in Gerasim, we see the opposite. We see where love and the acknowledgement of the truth of death can come in and ease pain and ease suffering.
Yeah, I think it's this idea that somehow it's indecent, right? The decency and pleasantness of life. Well, okay, maybe we kind of know death, it can't be pleasant, but somehow it's indecent to do so. And yet it is an aspect of being human. And he says no one could feel sorry for him because they didn't understand. Gerasim understands. And it's not like he does anything complicated. They have simple conversations when they talk. And he's open and he's kind. And the caregiver, that is just the word that comes to mind, cares for him, body and socially, where he's not climbing the rung. This man is just willing to be with him. And I like this because he tells Gerasim that you can go, just go. And he says, we're all going to die. Why not take the trouble to stay and comfort his master? It's really good.
Very, very good.
And so that's a Tolstoy-ism, this idea that peasantry, people who farmed and served, they had it right. They knew what it meant to serve the good. Far more than the aristocracy did. So that's, I think, very much part of his like mental, how he looked at social conventions and things that were important or not.
Yeah.
As they move along, Ivan, he loses his ability to think. Days blend together. It's painful to eat. He's afraid to be alone. At some point, he wishes for death, and then says, no, anything's better than death. From here, I got to... It's funny, it made me think of other stories, you too. Stranger Than Fiction is a wonderful movie where the main character thinks he's going to die. And he asked this professor, like, who in their right mind, would rather eat pancakes, than die? And it's Dustin Hoffman. And he basically asks him, he's like, I think you have to think about the quality of the life being led and the quality of the pancakes. If given a choice, given a choice between eating pancakes and dying, the quality of the pancakes is because in that story, the man's not happy, or he wasn't happy in his life. And he's like, okay, I kind of get it. And the professor tells him, go make it the life you want. Okay, you're going to die, but we all are. Go make it the life you want it to be. And I've been starting to ask deeper questions from again, it's all in his own mind, but he goes through these cycles of pain and morphine. So he's out of it a lot of the time. But then he comes back around. There's always these cycles where the doctor shows up and it's like the courtroom, the doctor games. And then his wife, she's not even there most of the time. She blames him. He lies with his legs up. It's just round and round. And in his head, he's thinking about death and life. Do I want to die? No, I want to live. And it's really devastating with his wife. Here's a quote. She says, everything she did for him, she did only for herself. And she said to him that she was doing for herself that which she was in fact doing for him. I'm like, wait, what? It's as if it was such an incredible thing that he would have to understand it inversely.
Yeah.
So she does stuff and says, no, this is for you. it's backwards and twisted, and he's just alone a lot.
Alone a lot, and more alone with his thoughts that are now drugged up, and he can't rely on those either. His body is in pain and isn't working, and his brain isn't working, but the thoughts do still come through. And I love what you just said about that movie and the idea of go make it the life you want. Ivan thought he did.
Yeah.
Ivan had made the life he wanted. That was the whole point of every step along the way, was this was the life he wanted. And so now when he's in pain and that life is gone, he's starting to ask why. Because he could understand it if he had lived terribly. If he had lived a horrible life, he could understand, okay, maybe I would deserve suffering. But my life, I always did what was right. I always did my duty. It was always good. So he starts to ask the question, why? Why am I suffering? And this is where he starts to talk with God. And God answers him. But he answers him in his own thoughts and in a still small voice. And you get this back and forth between Ivan. And the suggestion that comes up is, well, maybe I haven't lived right. And he rejects it immediately. That is just not possible. I have always lived right and always done my duty, and the suffering gets worse.
Yeah, here's a quote. It says, he at once recalled all the correctness of his life and drove this strange thought away. He can't immediately face it. But he does. He asks God, why have you done all this? Why have you brought me here? Why do you torment me so terribly? And then he listens. I love that it calls out that he's listening to the voice of his soul. A wonderful pastor I knew once said that God rarely yells. It's in the quiet. And it's funny that he's given an answer and you're like, no, that can't be it.
Yeah.
Don't we do that? Oh man.
Oh yeah.
That can't be it. Nope.
Yeah, it's much of the magic of this very short book is that this is us. We are in these characters, and these characters are in us, and that's not always a comforting thought because this is really, really hard.
Yeah, but much to learn, I think. So 2 more weeks go by. So the time is condensing. So it was years, then months. Now we're at 2 more weeks. And Ivan doesn't get up anymore. He's on the sofa almost all the time. He's very much more focused on the fact of death and this frustration with this lie that I'm not just ill. And it does say that his younger child, his son, he's not commonly in there. I think the mother might keep him away. But he is sad. He has dark circles under his eyes, and it says that Ivan knows why. Apparently, he feels this. Yeah. So of all the family, this young boy is the one who is sad and sees that his father is dying.
And this is finally something, I hesitate to use the word right, but at least natural. This little boy's dad is dying. He sees it, and he's sad. And what's unnatural is that the wife doesn't seem sad. The daughter doesn't seem sad. During these last several chapters, the daughter is now engaged and is again trying to live her life. And again, her dying father is just an inconvenience. And so finally, in Gerasim and in his son, we have something that is natural. There's some sorrow and some grief and some pity for this dying man.
At this time, Ivan really starts to dwell and think back to his childhood. And in his mind, those were his last truly happy times. And this is beautiful. He goes through memories of taste, what it used to really mean to taste things. He had very specific memories about like shriveled prunes and things that stuck in his brain.
It is Russia.
But that conjures up memories of his nanny, his brother, his toys, his mother. And he has this bright spot in childhood. And from where he is now, he feels like it's just gone downhill from there. Here's a quote. It says, "It would be possible to explain it if I were to say to myself that I had not lived as one ought, but that cannot possibly be acknowledged." He had rigidity, regularity, decency in his life. What he was taught by those high society people, that's what mattered. So there is no possible explanation. has to get to this immensely painful spot for him to actually turn and look at what his life has been.
Mm-hmm. We're getting near the end now, so I'm in the 11th chapter, and I think the most profound thing that then happens, his wife suggests that maybe it's time to see a priest. Maybe it's time to take the sacrament. This is among the last rites. This is finally honesty. This is a way of saying, although she doesn't actually say it, but the fact that he's suggesting this, she knows he's gonna die. And so this is as honest as she gets about that lie.
He has a downturn that leads into that because he looks at Gerasim, that the young, earnest man who's been helping him, and he realizes that there's a weakness in the defense of his life, and then that there's nothing to defend in his life. He didn't serve the good like this young man has been doing. And that basically, mine calls it one vast deception, and he's literally choking on it. He's writhing, and that's what prompts the suggestion for communion. And he says he takes it, and there's a sort of relief from his doubts and sufferings, and there's tears in his eyes as he takes communion.
Afterwards, she asks him, well, don't you feel better? And for a moment he does, but then he doesn't. And this, I think, is where it really sinks in. He finally knows the truth, that he has not lived his life well. And this is where he starts to scream. Says, go away, leave me alone. And then begins the 3 days of just torment and screaming. And it's striking the way this is written, because so much of this pain is not actually the pain in his body. This is the pain in his soul as he's realizing that his life has been wasted and his body is dying, and it's too late to change that now.
Yeah, and he's screaming something specific. It's just too inarticulate for somebody else to recognize. He's screaming, I won't. I won't. What do you think he means by I won't?
I think it's I won't die.
I won't die.
I think he cannot face the idea of it all being over.
I think this entirely is the death before the death. He's dying to himself before his body actually goes. And I think that I won't is his self. He refuses to let go of his idea of self. I won't. For 3 days of mental agony, screaming and howling. Because his body, I think he accepted a while ago that his body is dying. But it's this idea of self that I didn't do what I knew to be right. It says way back when he was young. He knew, he felt that. And then they told him, no, it was fine. All those things we did, that was fine, that was right. And he has to look back. He's given this time in his body to let himself die, his self die.
I think that is so good and so right.
3 days.
Yeah. There's a line in C.S. Lewis's Till We Have Faces that's die before you die. There is no time after. And yeah, I think that's what's happening here. The death before the death. You are right. You nailed that one.
Here's a quote. It says, he struggled as one condemned to death struggles in the executioner's hands, knowing he cannot save himself. It has this illustration of he feels like he's being thrust into a black sack. It says the justification of his life clutched at him, tormented him most of all. That idea of his self that he has upheld this whole time and, prided himself upon. But in his mind, he finally falls through that hole. He gets stuffed into that sack. And it says something lit up. Instead of a black sack, something lit up. And it's a great parallel. It's like when you're on a train, when you think you're moving forward, but are moving backwards, and suddenly you find out the real direction. It's a really good illustration.
It is. And he talks about the feeling like this light hits him. So this light hits him and his hand falls down and it falls onto his son. His son who is there and weeping and feeling sorry for him. And so many things happen right here. Because he realizes he doesn't hate his son. He realized he doesn't hate his wife anymore. He doesn't hate anyone. He's given that up. That has died. And this is earlier you had said they had told him to take his son away. And this is where he says, take him away. I'm sorry for him. And at this point, his words aren't coming out in any recognizable way. It says, he tried to add, forgive me, but said, forgo. And too weak to correct himself, waved his hand, knowing that whoever was concerned would understand. And it keeps happening. And I'm just going to read the next. And all at once it became clear to him that what had been oppressing him and would not go away was suddenly dropping away on one side, on two sides, on 10 sides, on all sides. He felt full of pity for them. He must do something to make it less painful for them, release them and release himself from this suffering. How right and how simple, he thought. And the pain? He asked himself, what has become of it? Where are you, pain?
And it turns out he finds it and he says, okay. I mean, he has hit a place of acceptance. He says, I can do right now. He has a moment of listening again. He's listening for that voice in his soul. But what is right? And it's right for him to forgive. It is right for him to take care of his son in the only way he now can. And he does. So the pain is still there. He accepts it. He looks for death. And the fear is gone. No more fear because there was no more death. He died to himself already. Fear is gone. Instead of death, there was light.
So that's what it is. He suddenly exclaimed aloud, what joy! To him, all this happened in a single instant, and the meaning of that instant suffered no change thereafter. For those present, his agony lasted another 2 hours. There was a rattle in his throat, a twitching of his wasted body. Then the gasping and the rattle came at longer and longer intervals. It's all over, said someone near him. He caught the words and repeated them in his soul. Death is over, he said to himself. It is no more. He drew in a breath, stopped in the midst of a sigh, stretched out, and died.
You'll like this. This is the first translation difference that I've really felt between ours. Mine says, it is finished.
Yes.
Death is finished. It is no more.
Which, testestelai, it is finished, came the words of our Savior from the cross, which in the language of the time was what was stamped on documents to indicate paid in full, complete redemption. Yeah, that's a better translation.
I thought you'd like that. And that is the end of this story. I do want to talk about a new to me creator I have found through Substack. I'm loving it, by the way. People go create things. They write things. They're beautiful. There's a poet and storyteller named Martin Shaw. He wrote an essay called On Death. And it's longer than this. I'm going to abridge it. But he basically takes issue with the idea of saying, it's not my time or it wasn't my time. And I'm just going to read a couple pieces of this. He says, we are walking backwards into our own graves, so filled with denial, because we lived not really once thinking that such a thing could one day happen to us. Part of getting made into a human is the final part, getting unmade. That preparation for death is not the same as what was before it. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. It's not my time is not the appropriate mantra of a grown-up. One day, any day, it will be my time is better. So he's talking about that remembering that's going to happen. And if we look at it ahead, there is peace to be had there and joy. And again, I do not claim to have this all figured out.
No.
But there is a lot worth thinking about in this story. And it is focused on death. It starts with death and it goes through till the end of Ivan Ilyich's days. And so for myself, this week, as I was preparing for this, several people that I've lost.
Before we get into this, may I ask one more question?
Oh, yeah.
Jody, have you ever written an essay on the death of Ivan Ilyich?
It's a very leading question, brother.
Oh, yeah. Do proceed.
Many, many moons ago. So at our high school, you did it too. You could do something called running start. You could take college credits while you're still in high school. And I took a lit class. You took that same lit class a couple years ahead.
It was life-changing for me because I was all math science, and this taught me that, no, it's okay to read literature. So I loved it, and I think I recommended it to you.
You did. And we went through a Norton anthology. Not every one, because there's tons in a Norton Reader, but they are wonderful collections. Even though we read really bummer things like Madame Bovary, I learned a lot. And at our final paper, but prior to graduating from high school, I required those credits. You could pick a story to write an essay on that we'd read in class or one otherwise from the Norton anthology. And I picked The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Don't remember why. And I wrote a paper on it, turned it in. It was like 2 days before high school graduation. And I had to go talk to the professor. She did not have my paper. And I'm like, is there a problem? She's like, did you plagiarize that? Excuse me? No? What? She's like, you didn't? Like, no. Okay. And that was kind of it. I'm like, can I have my paper? She's like, well, it's not graded yet. Do I get to graduate? Like, and for, 20 years more than, I have wondered if that was an insult because I never got my paper back. But yes, I wrote an essay on the death of Ivan Ilyich when I was 18. And just recently, my husband found it on an old we thought it was dead computer hard drive. So it's pretty good. I read not anything like we talked about. I could do better today. But for 18, I'm like, yeah, all right.
What I take about this, because again, this was really before the internet was a big deal and stuff like that. So Jody, at 18 years old, wrote a paper that her college professor thought was so professional that clearly it was plagiarized. So I think this is an impressive thing you did right there.
I don't know. I think it just sounded old. She's like, really? 18-year-olds don't use words like that. So
I've been in the class.
That's true. You talk way older than me. But no, it was fun. And it's really interesting to go back to something you wrote so long ago. Like, I don't write essays anymore. And the form of them is really different. And it was fun to find. So.
I'm trying to talk her into posting that essay on Substack so we can all enjoy it.
It's not that good.
Write in. Beg her to do
it. Oh my goodness. It's not that good. But I don't know. I felt a little offended. And it was funny that all the proof I needed was saying no. Did you plagiarize it? No. Okay. Like, okay. Glad we agree.
Ooh, I almost caught her on that one.
No.
Usually they confess.
It was just a weird exchange. Yeah. I don't know. I've always been confused by it. So it's cool to read it and be like, okay, it was fine. I was all serious.
Well, I felt I had to get that in before the serious part. So,
all right. Well, shifting gears a little bit in preparing for Ivan Ilyich and just thinking about death more this week. In doing so, I've been remembering some people who were part of my life, either big or small, that they just popped into my brain this week as I was thinking about how important it is to remember those who have gone before. And I think to say their names. These people have all passed on and have meant something dear to me. So the names that came to mind this week, this is not an exhaustive list, but they are the ones that just were put on my heart this week. Kathy Jolly, Ben Brown, John and Emily Hampton, Bob McIntosh, and Sarah Bolin. Gone, but not forgotten.
Dave and Shirley Jolly.
Mm-hmm. So, wanted to remember them. And I think it would be right and good to remember Ivan. Because there was a line at the beginning of this story when his friend was looking at Ivan's body, that there was on his face the expression that what needed to be done had been done, and done rightly.
And with that, we'll turn the page, and we hope you join us for the next chapter.